Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with New York Jazz saxophonist Gabriel Evan. He opened up about his newest 2021 CD, Global Entry, that is a playful, skillful exploration of pre-war jazz, early chamber jazz, and bug music. Prior to the pandemic, this native New Yorker performed over 300 shows per year, spanning traditional jazz, gypsy jazz, early Caribbean music, and pop favorites and deep cuts of the 70s and 80s. As a member of the traditional and gypsy communities, he has been performing as both a leader and sideman for the past 11 years. He's got a great story. Enjoy it.
Hey, thanks for taking a minute out.
Of course, anytime.
You got quite a magnanimous name for a debut album, Global Entry. I dig it.
Yeah, thank you.
I mean,
there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's just the magnitude of those words together just makes sense.
Right.
It's come out, though, during a global pandemic. I want to know your thoughts, not like when you made it and all of that, but it is coming out during a global pandemic, limited live performances, everything else going on. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, it was recorded in New Orleans 2 years ago at Butcher Studios. I kind of took the advice of Chris Butcher, who's the engineer and mixer and masterer, and he said, just kind of sit on it for a little bit, forget about it. Then when you're ready, come back to it. You can start mixing and all that stuff. So I followed his advice, and I took maybe almost a year away from the recordings, because I was pretty busy. I tore my Achilles, which was a bummer, before the pandemic. And then as soon as that was healing and everything seemed to be going well, I was like, all right, time to get this going. And then, of course, the pandemic hit, which in terms of mixing and mastering a record wasn't the worst thing ever because, Butcher had a lot of time on his hands to work with me, so that was nice. And in terms of the album title, my longtime friend, Zach Cates, who is the album artist for this record and my previous record, when he listened to it, he said it sounded like he was going on a trip around the world, which is kind of what I was going for. So he thought it should be called Suitcase or something like that. That's how this started. And then I was just talking with him on the phone, and it came to me all of a sudden, and he loved it. And then I ran it by a couple other people, and they loved it. And it was just very appropriate in a whole lot of ways. So we went with Global Entry, yeah.
Yeah, my wife loves the Pink Flamingo, so I'm going to have to make sure she sees this for sure. So one thing I guess that's also cool and magnanimous about the title of this, I don't want to keep harping on that, but it's coming out on International Jazz Day, and that's quite an entry.
I'll be honest, I didn't choose the day based on that. I was thinking of releasing it earlier this year, but, things kind of kept getting pushed back, and I was making videos and doing all this work, and so it just kind of kept getting pushed back. And then, working with Orange Grove Publicity, basically I had to schedule with them what worked, and we just came to April 30th as like the day that worked for us. And so it's really a coincidence, to be honest, more than anything else. I didn't go into it knowing.
So speaking of this idea of possibly it being Suitcase and this global appeal, there are so many influences that are drawn into it. Talk to me a little bit about how those influences kind of have shaped you as a creator and an artist yourself.
I'm in the community in New York City of traditional jazz and gypsy jazz, or jazz manouche. I'm very aware of the standards and the music that everybody plays. You go to jam sessions and there's certain songs that are called. I happen to love the deep cuts. I like to see what was going on in the world at the same, during the swing era, basically the 30s, little 20s, little 40s as well. What was going on around the world during that time, and records were starting to make it everywhere. So, like, for instance, Cuba, which was very close to the States, was probably getting some records very early. Django was getting records and, heard Louis Armstrong play, and that changed his whole approach to music. So the world was changing really fast, and there was a lot of interesting stuff going on. I happen to base my sextet off of the John Kirby sextet in terms of instrumentation and in terms of approach. I try to take a chamber jazz approach. So I love classical music. I love how Charlie Shaver's arranged classical music for jazz band, and I kind of experimented with keeping that tradition alive. Opening the CD with Waltz of the Flowers by Tchaikovsky, and did kind of like a hot jazz take on that. And so that, between that and trying to explore what other countries were doing, during the swing era, that's kind of how the album came to be, I guess.
You're a native New Yorker. Talk to me a little bit about how the beginnings of this love affair with jazz started for you.
I begged my mom for a violin when I was 7. Her sister, my aunt, played violin growing up, and she nixed that real fast. So she said, "How about a saxophone?" And I said, "Great." And so I got a saxophone at 8 years old and begged for lessons. And I was very self-motivated even as a kid. I was practicing as a kid by myself and really working on stuff. I'm originally from Ossining, New York, in Westchester County, and I did a lot of my learning in Peekskill, New York, under Dave Finucane, who now teaches, I believe, at Duke University in North Carolina. And he was just a fantastic instructor and ran a little club called One Station Plaza. And so I got to meet some great artists and meet some lifelong friends in middle school and high school that I'm still in touch with, still play music with as well. And so that was kind of the beginning of my musical career, I guess. Of course, coming into the city all the time to see shows, all through middle school and high school all the time as well.
Well, speaking of, what was the first show that you saw in the city that really made you think, man, that's something I'd love to do?
Man, well, I was really into rock as well, and so I remember I also played a little electric bass and electric guitar and stuff like that. So, I mean, outside of jazz, I think the show that I was like, I really want to do this, I would probably, as ridiculous as it sounds, I would say the band Moe, M-O-E. They're a jam band, and I saw their 10th anniversary show at either Irving Plaza or Hammerstein Ballroom, I want to say, and I was like 14. I was a child, and they were on their third set going into the wee hours in the morning, and I had to leave because I was a kid, and I was like, man, I wish I could just play all night in front of, thousands of people. And so that's what I would say. Rock and roll made me want to be a performing musician more than jazz did, at least initially as a kid.
So during this time of self-reflection and change, how do you believe you and the collective world of jazz will emerge stronger because of this?
I can't speak on behalf of everyone, and I know certain people handle tragedy and, I guess, strife differently. The pandemic and quarantine has, people deal with stuff differently. So I'm not going to say that the way I dealt with it is the only way you should deal with it, and if you didn't, then you wasted your time or whatever. But as soon as lockdown started, I was working like 10 hours a day. I was working so much. I had no internet because I brought back the cable box and the router and stuff before a tour because I wanted to leave Optimum. And then I got back and lockdown happened. So I was doing everything from my phone and just using my computer for Sibelius, basically. And so I had a list. I had email drafts of stuff that I wanted to do for years. And so I basically used, certainly the first month and a half or 2 months, I was arranging and transcribing every day for hours. And that was the way that I kind of got through lockdown. And so, and then until about when George Floyd died, then I took a little bit of a break. But I was releasing content. I was making a cappella videos on the a cappella app, if you're familiar, which is, they look like the Brady Bunch introduction. And so I was kind of getting my feet wet with that, and I would make the arrangement and then record it and post it to my Patreon page. I started a Patreon page to kind of get content out and get a little bit of money in while I waited for the world to kind of sort itself out.
Why do you love jazz?
Boy, freedom of expression. The true American art form, in my opinion, it's one of the biggest contributions to the world of music, in my opinion. I love jazz. I just love the way it makes me feel. And even more so, I think when I was younger, I would say, I love soloing, and and obviously I still do, and it's the ultimate freedom of expression. But even the chamber stuff where there's no solo, the first solo on the record isn't until the fourth track, and I love that just as much. The ability to create a mood and making it hot, making it swing, and get people excited. That's why I love jazz.
So when we do return to the stage and the audience and all of that starts kind of getting back in earnest, what do you hope we all kind of realize about the power of live music?
Well, there is no substitute. I was saying that even before the pandemic. Go to a wedding that has a DJ, and then go to a wedding that has a 12-piece band. Like, where are you going to have more fun? The band. I mean, always. It's a better time. There's nothing that can replace that interaction between band and audience. You can get auto-tune and you can get all this stuff, but you can't replace the live music. That's the one thing they won't be able to take away. I know the industry changes all the time with streaming and yada, 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 but there's nothing like a live performance. It's just irreplaceable. So, and you see it. You walk through the parks of New York City now. Everybody, a lot of my friends are busking and bringing out crowds. You get the swing dancers out there that are dancing to big bands in Washington Square Park, and it's a spectacle. I mean, people that have no interest in jazz end up sitting around because they miss that live interaction. And that sort of entertainment can't be replaced, in my opinion.
I agree, man. So let's get to the essence of you. Everyone has a perception or an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans. But you live your life. You wake up every day and live your life. Who do you think you are?
That's a good question. I'm a real mixed bag. I have a lot of interests, and I've always had a lot of interests growing up. And I'm very big into sports. I'm a huge hockey fan, a diehard New York Islanders fan, and Mets fan, and all. I grew up playing sports, and I love it. Usually, that's kind of a rare thing these days. But I like to think I'm the same person I've been since I was 13. Basically, I try to give it my all for everything I do. I think I feel things pretty deeply on a personal level. I take the things that I do very seriously. Not that I can't have fun, obviously, but I take things seriously. I like things to be a certain way, and I like to put in the work to make sure that happens. So that's how I see myself. I think my parents would use probably a different word, maybe stubborn, maybe a little bit, but a little bit of stubbornness is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, you got to be sure about yourself for sure. Hey, man, thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz. Good luck with the album and the return to live music.
Hey, thank you, Joe. I appreciate the call.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Gabriel for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.